the so-called minor cases of Italian citizenship by descent. A lot of people are starting to talk about the so-called minor cases, especially right now where we are in a sort of a limbo, where we have a court, the Supreme Court of Cassazione, who created this new interpretation of the old regulation for Italian citizenship by descent. So they created the so-called minor cases. So today we want to clarify a little more about this, and we want to share with you some interesting case, one case, which can be a solution to the so-called minor cases. Because under certain circumstances, if you have a minor case, you can still win your case. This is Marco Bersani, as always, from the Bersani Law Office from Italy, and do not lose any more time. Let's start. So first of all, I would like to start by explaining a little bit the so-called minor cases, because maybe you never heard about the minor cases, and that's pretty normal, because the minor cases is a new interpretation in a new legal creation that was made recently in 2023 by the Supreme Court of Cassazione in Italy, which created this new interpretation of how some cases must be handled and not approved, actually, for the application for Italian citizenship by descent. And it's pretty normal that you never heard about the minor cases, because historically speaking, it's more than 30 years that the applications are always approved by also the Italian consulates when you have a typical case. For example, you have your Italian grandfather, your grandfather had your father abroad, for example in the United States. If your father was born from an Italian grandfather, then you are eligible. No matter what happened next, if your grandfather naturalized, if your father naturalized after the birth of your father, technically speaking, you may be eligible. So this is how the ruling works in the last decades. From 2023, the Supreme Court created these new minor cases. What does it mean? It means that in our example, grandfather, father, you as applicant, if we have your father that was born from grandfather when grandfather was still an Italian citizen, but your grandfather after naturalized, so became American, for example, when your father was still a minor, well, because he was a minor, your father was also affected by the naturalization of the grandfather, so technically speaking, you're not eligible. So we want to analyze this situation, and we can also share with you how this type of cases can be solved in certain situations, only in certain situations. Here I have an interesting case that was processed in 2023. So it's pretty recent, but I'm pretty sure that I will have more cases in a close future. Maybe we can prepare to you new videos where we share some updates about this type of cases. So basically, we need to consider that when you have a so-called minor cases, you may have a case that can be also proved under certain situation. What situation? Let's make the example that was made in this type of case. Here there's a case that was processed by the court, the Tribunale in Venice, in Venice. In this case, the applicant had a grandmother that was Italian. Grandmother emigrated abroad, in this case in Brazil, where she met grandfather that was not Italian but Brazilian citizen. They had the applicant's father, and then the applicant as the starring of the application. What happened? Grandmother never naturalized, so she remained Italian for the entire life. The client went to the applicant went to the court. Why? Because there was not a 1940 case, but there was a case of lack of appointment. So in Brazil, like many other countries, it's literally impossible to have an appointment, or there are like a waiting list of 10 years, which is crazy. So because of the waiting list of 10 years, the applicant says, no, I want to go to the court because of the lack of appointments. Technically, it's a lack of appointment. The case was won. The judge said, yes, of course, you have a clear path. Your grandmother's remain Italian. Your grandmother never naturalized, so she remained Italian for her entire life, and so you can have your rights, or you can have your Italian dual citizenship. What is really interesting into the case was the situation between grandmother and grandfather. As I said before at the beginning when explaining the story, I said that grandmother was the only one Italian. So grandmother married grandfather who was Brazilian, so not Italian. The judge also says, make a clear explanation. The judge also says that the Italian law at the time, so the law 555 of 1912, the article 10 says that the foreign woman who married an Italian citizen, an Italian male, automatically get Italian citizenship. Without any formalities, says the judge, without any formalities and any impediment. So there is no also formalities on the administrative side. So there is no need to register the marriage at the time. And also says the judge, this is valid by the law, the old law. This is valid when the woman married the Italian man, but at the same time is valid when there is a foreign man then marry an Italian woman, of course, for the principle of equality between men and women. So at the same time, it says, beside the fact you have an eligible claim from grandmother, also your grandfather was considered Italian citizen because automatically by marriage got the Italian citizenship. So if you are in this situation, you may be able to solve the minor case by claiming the fact that the other person, the spouse of the Italian immigrant, the spouse of Italian ancestor got Italian citizenship automatically via marriage. Of course, these require mainly two things to consider. First, we are talking about a marriage from an Italian and a non-Italian, a foreigner. So only in this case you have the transmission of citizenship. Because if you have two Italian ancestors then married, you cannot do that because, I mean, of course, in this case you have two Italian ancestors and two Italian citizens, so there is no transmission of Italian citizenship, they are already citizens. So you can bypass the problem of the minor case by using the rule of the transmission via marriage, jure matrimoni, for being able to claim your Italian citizenship. Of course, we are talking about a process anyway is decided by a judge. Of course, we are not saying that this is guaranteed. There are no guarantees of the outcome, so we are not saying you are 100% sure that your application will be approved because there is a judge that decides your application. But of course, there are legal precedents. So there are legal precedents which apply, of course, the legal principle. This is pretty clear actually, so it seems not a principle that can be changed. But the fact there is a legal principle, a really recent legal principle, it means that you can make a claim also if you fall under these cases, and only under these cases, you may have a claim to overcome the problem of the minor cases until hopefully the minor cases will be solved too. We don't know what the future, what will happen in the future. We don't know right now if the minor cases will be a problem, a final problem, definitive problem or not. We don't know, so we will keep you updated, of course, if there are changes, if also to understand if the local tribunals are applying the minor case rule or not, because it's possible that maybe the tribunal won't apply the minor case. But just in case, if you fall under these circumstances, so you have a case that can be a minor case, but with these circumstances, you know that you may have more chance of success thanks to this legal principle, this legal precedent, of course. As always, you can leave comments, you can share some questions you have, you can use the comment section below to leave your comments. Of course, we cannot do consultation, so this is always pretty clear. If you need an analysis of your case, if you want that we have a check to your case, if it's a minor case or not, what we can do, what chance of success you have, and you can contact us through the website. So you can go the website, there is a contact form you can use, and you can also, there's a form for booking consultation call. This is the best way we can analyze your case. We can make a video call with you, we can talk with you directly, check your document, review your documents, check your case, and advise you about the best strategy for filing an application, if you are eligible, of course. And what is also always very important is to subscribe to the channel, so do not forget to subscribe to the channel. This is always important because as soon as we post any new videos, new updates, latest news, post, service, anything that we post with you, you will immediately receive a notification on your phone. So it's really, really important for keeping you updated with all the latest news about all the process for citizenship or any other immigration topic that we cover. Thank you so much for your time and see you on the next videos.